Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Jeweler's Guide to Hassle-Free Holiday Prep presented by Clientbook. My name is Carly, and I'll be your moderator for the presentation. Today's webinar explores how Clientbook can help you drive sales, boost foot traffic, and take the stress out of the holiday shopping experience for you, your sales team, and your customers. Just as a general note to our attendees, all of your mics are muted. That said, if you have any questions for our presenter, feel free to post them in the Q&A forum, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. If you have any technical questions as we get started, you can use the chat feature to communicate with us, and we'll do our best to help you out. Today's slide presentation and our speaker's audio is being recorded, so we can provide you with the material afterward. Now, I would like to introduce our speaker, Ryan Blumenthal. As Clientbook's Chief Revenue Officer and third-generation owner of Corinne Jewelers in Toms River, New Jersey, Ryan understands the needs of retail jewelers. Ryan started his career as an account executive for Intelidon, located in Tampa, Florida, the industry leader in e-learning technology and online training platforms. However, his passion for retail eventually led him back to Corinne Jewelers, where he has maintained a leadership role for more than 18 years, providing guidance to his staff on how to succeed in retail. Today, he helps retailers nationwide create processes around clienteling and the Clientbook desktop and mobile app. With his expertise, retailers can fully take advantage of Clientbook's power and capabilities in driving traffic and sales in today's retail landscape. And with that, Ryan, please take it away.
Great. Thank you, Carly, and good afternoon, everyone. Excited for this presentation and today's topic, hassle-free holiday prep. Now, I don't know if anybody could really make this hassle-free, but I think having a plan tends to set us at ease a little bit more this time of year. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And thank you again for joining us. So before we get into that, a little bit about Clientbook. If you don't have Clientbook already and maybe have heard about us, but Clientbook is a mobile-based clienteling platform specifically built for the retail jeweler in the context of the retail jeweler wanting to drive personalized engagement with their customer base in order to retain them, get them more into the store more often. And that's really the mission that we come to market with as Clientbook. We want to help you build long-term relationships with your clients. We believe that you need to maximize every sales opportunity that's out there for you. We spent a lot of time thinking about how do we enable sales associates for success in retail and scale personalized service. And Carly's mentioned a little bit about my bio, but that's where I've spent a lot of time in my career trying to get to a level of scale in personalized service in my own retail store. And I know that's such a challenge for us all as our businesses grow. Does the service that we provide get diluted because we're not the ones doing it, and it's really dependent on our stores, our sales associates that get it done? And really, it's the hallmark of how we built our businesses, is that level of service. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today, but Clientbook, we're very fortunate to be in about 1,300 retailers in the US and Canada. That means we have about 11,000 users in the system right now, communicating with their clients every day and really enriching that experience. Carly did a great job introducing me and my background, but again, this is my retail store. This is what I've spent close to 20 years building, just like you all have on this call and building your businesses. And probably the one part that is left out is, well, how the heck did I become CRO of Clientbook? How am I doing this? And the story is that I bought a very early version of Clientbook for my store after trying to replicate what I learned in my retail upbringing, was keeping these physical client books, back then pen and pad, and you had a client sheet, and you would take that client sheet and make sure you knew their birthdays, anniversaries, what they liked, their preferences, when to reach out to them, kind of keep a calendar. And you did that in kind of connection with your point of sale, maybe. And I was looking for something more, a little bit more enhanced. And just so happens I met the founders of Clientbook. And this was about close to 5 years ago as they were first coming to market, and they were between fashion and jewelry. And I took a look at this and I said, this is exactly what jewelry stores need, and I'd love to help out. And that's really how I got involved with the Clientbook. But I'm still a retailer to this day, and a lot of what we'll go over today is just through the lens of my experience in both my own store, but having the fortunate last couple of years of working with over 1,300 retailers and them sharing their experiences with me. I've learned so much. A little bit of an outline. The kind of what we'll cover today is, number one, the opportunity. We have the holidays that are here, and it's on us to maximize that. We'll go into some of the problems that are out there currently, the unknowns of the holiday season and other problems that might create a roadblock for us. The solution, which we believe is client management software. We're going to talk about the difference between doing that manually versus doing it on digitally. We're going to go into holidays tips and tricks, a few things that I've found work really well for our clients leading into the holiday. And then lastly, how a CRM can help with this whole process, a CRM like Clientbook, of course. And then Carly will hop on and do a little Q&A. So as we go through this presentation, if you haven't been on a Zoom webinar like this before, there's a little button on the bottom of your screen, and you could enter in questions that you'd like to have Carly and I discuss at the end of this presentation, which runs about a little bit 30 minutes. So let's talk about the opportunity first. And the opportunity for us is that this looks like it's going to be a promising holiday season for the jewelry industry. And maybe it's going to be your best one yet. So let's take a look at some data here. Is that early shoppers, though, it's very important for us to capitalize on this, because about half of consumers are going to start their holiday shopping even before the calendar turns to December. So we really need to start thinking about this now, and how do we get in front of them, because there's only so much pie to go around. So we want to be important on this, and it's important to remember that half of these consumers start shopping early. When did the others half shop? Well, 5 days before the holidays, right? And that's the life that we have, which is why we're always nervous up until December 24th. Second stat being that overall retail sales are expected to grow this year between 4 and 6%. Now, last year, I believe that this was around 8%. So this is a smaller increase than last year, but still an increase. So the consumer is still spending more. And if you watch the news lately, they're really propping up the entire economy, as it accounts for about 70% of our economy is consumer driven. And while there's weaknesses throughout, parts of it, the consumer is still spending. And I don't think that's going to change in the next 2 months. So we really need to capitalize on it. Overall, the outlook is growth when it comes to the jewelry market. We're at about 340 billion now, and that's expected to grow annually at around 4% from 23 to 2030. And so this is all good news. How do we be a part of this more? If we're running our store, how do we make sure that we capture more of this revenue as we operate our stores? That's something that we all need to think about. What we think about at Clientbook is, how do we do this through the lens of client relationships with our current customers? Because there's a lot of what you might do out to acquire customers. And you run billboards and online campaigns and social and SEO and on the radio and all these things. And my presentation today is not to diminish those things, but to rather highlight the cost of those versus perhaps marketing to your customers a little bit better than you are today. And that's why we spend a lot of time thinking about these 3 stats at Clientbook. And that is that acquiring a new customer is 5 times more expensive than retaining an existing one. Okay, so that media spend that you're going to do to acquire a new customer, it's important. But if you're not having a great campaign to your current customers, or you don't have that personalized outreach, you're really leaving possibly a good amount of business off the table. Stat number 2 is they convert a heck of a lot higher than new customers, upwards of 2x, some would even say 3 times. So what does conversion mean? People that came to the store, did they buy or did they not? Now, your existing customers, the reason that they convert so much higher is they trust you. You've already established that relationship between your store, your brand, yourself maybe, and that customer. Whereas a new customer, they don't know you quite yet. So they're going to come in and you're going to hear things like, I'm going to think about it. I still have some shopping to do. And that's normal consumer behavior. They're not cemented with your brand quite yet. And then lastly, your existing customers spend about 31% more when compared to new customers. Again, this is a trust. This is a trust thing in that they have that established relationship. You could put that kind of step up product in front of them. They're going to trust your advice on it. And this really affects average sale. And in my career in retail and in my own peer groups, we sit around and talk about these 3 things. It couldn't be of more importance to retailers, right? It's how much did we spend to get our customers? What was their conversion rate? And what was the average spend? I mean, when you think about it, that's a huge part of us being successful as retailers. So something that always needs to be top of mind for us. Now, if you're watching this live, you're saying, yes, I get it. I understand those things. And so why does this maybe not happen as much, or why do we lose focus on this, or perhaps don't have a solidified strategy around taking advantage of this? Well, we'll point out a few things that we find in the market that tend to be roadblocks when it comes to this. And that's in that we're going to focus on the unknowns and then the knowns, and then we'll get to some further roadblocks that we experience. But we get caught up a lot in the things that we don't know. And a few of those for this year might be, are my sales going to be as good as last year? Will inflation impact my business? Can I afford to increase my marketing spend? Will I be able to grow my client base? And these unknowns are, they tend to be just something that gives you anxiety and maybe not the best use of time, spending your kind of limited bandwidth on focusing on them. And I would put to you that it's a lot better to focus on what you know. And the first one being is that if you've been in retail for a while, you have a loyal client base at your disposal. They're already familiar with your business, and effective client management really requires a whole lot less spending, and retaining customers is easier than acquiring new ones. So you got to focus on what you know to solidify that plan. And yet there are some obstacles that you'll need to handle as you focus on these things. And kind of the first one being, that it can be time consuming. So client management tasks can be tedious when there's hundreds or thousands of clients. So one of the first things we ask sales associates when we're trying to learn about businesses and what they're currently doing, when we talk to them about clienteling, these activities that you might do to cultivate, one of the things that we find when we ask them why you don't do it more consistently is they will always say it's time consuming. And so it's a legitimate concern. Some of it isn't, and then there's some reasons why it does take up a lot of time. We'll get to that on a different slide. It's manual. It's pen and pad, and a lot of spreadsheets or printing out reports, and these are all things that just add to that first problem we have, which is time consuming. And lastly, it being unfamiliar to them. I think most sales associates aren't necessarily trained on how to facilitate client relationships when they're outside of the store. We spend a lot of time in the industry focused on when they come into the store, what's that experience like? And how do we get them to convert, get them to the point of sale, make the sale, make them happy? That's where we spend a lot of our time. And that's why to this day, some of the best writers out there, people doing over $1 million that are just fantastic, when you ask them to clientele or when you put them that task to them, they could be nervous about it. They don't quite know what that looks like. So it needs to be trained on in our industry at a kind of higher velocity than I believe it does right now. And I was just catching up with a friend recently that kind of shared the same sentiment that, that they're one of the top writers in the store, and but they've done it through clienteling over the years. They're pretty much by appointment with their client list. And I asked them why his peers weren't like that, and they said, I just don't think they ever got the training. They're just here kind of clerking the sales as they go along, and that's why we find this. There's tends to be a disconnect between what an owner of a business wants and the sales associates. About 72% of sales owners, they'll say that they want to level up their teams when it comes to clienteling. And sales associates, when you poll them, their main focuses are around closing that deal and not necessarily what am I doing to cultivate that relationship, get them coming back to the store next year, all on those things, because we just don't talk about it enough. So there's a handful of solutions here. We won't get into each and every one of them, but we'll obviously going to do it a little bit through the context of what we do at Clientbook. And really, the key here is how do we use software to manage our clients? And what will that do for us? One, it's going to save time, which is the number one killer of why clienteling doesn't happen. You're going to be able to organize, filter, and sort through your entire client database without hassle when you utilize software to manage your clients. You could then automate a lot of these processes that tend to be time-consuming, difficult, take your people off the sales floor. These are things that really get you jammed up in business. And then, lastly here, and obviously the intent here is to drive sales, okay? Business goes where business is invited. One of my favorite consultants over the years always told me that, and it really is true. So we're doing these things to drive sales, and guys, it really is possible. This is one of our clients, John Carter, is a beautiful jewelry store in the States, and they really didn't have a formalized process on this contacting of clients after they left the store to help drive more sales past that first one. And ever since implementing kind of best practices, Clientbook software, they've paid for this 100 times over, and they made sales that they would not have otherwise gotten if that reach out wasn't there, if they didn't invite them into the store. So love sharing client wins, because again, it's one thing for me to say it, it's another thing for us to share success stories with our clients. But ultimately, this comes down to what's the old way versus what's possible, what's manual versus digital, how do we clear this up? The current state tends to look like this when we talk to a retailer prior to them having software like Clientbook, is that they tend to keep this information in a handful of different ways. They have their point of sale systems, great at collecting it. They might still have physical notebooks. They got the sticky notes with a reminder for themselves to do something in that physical notebook. They have maybe spreadsheets that they're tracking, allocated watches that people on waiting lists for. They have even personal devices on their phones and using their personal phone number, or maybe they're using a third-party messaging app. And essentially, they need to kind of connect all these things together in order to clientele every day. And that, again, is the number one killer of this. This is what leads to it. Everything saying is time consuming. Second one being, once we institute software to this problem with the goals of putting it all in one place, you have this centralized location. It's organized. You can search it. It's integrated. It's easy to use. This is essentially what could bring success to a new form of clienteling out there. Now, I'd like to share with you, as we talk about the holidays, how this could be used in the coming weeks to make it a great, great holiday. So the first one being segmenting your customers. I really think segmenting is the key to personalization. And we really recommend you put your customers into 3 buckets. Now, there could be more, but if you're not used to this, or this is a new concept, you could start off with 3. I would say the first bucket here is your VIP customers. So these are high value customers, see them regularly. If they pull up to the store, it's going to be a good day. Okay, we have to know who these customers are, and we need to be easily be able to identify them. Next group being what I call steady eddies, which is customers that come in once a year, twice a year, maybe. Maybe it's not the biggest sale, but they are consistent customers. This is really the lifeblood of your business. And we also need to segment them because this is a very large where VIPs, if we're thinking about a 20,000 database, they might be just a couple hundred, right? These are really the top spenders of the store. Steady 80s, this is a bigger number. So this is a harder one to manage and personalize. And the key to that is to segment them. And then we have first timers, that shoppers that made one purchase with you and they haven't been back in the store yet. It's important to know that because this is a category that often gets missed when it comes to clienteling because we don't really have enough data on them yet. So they tend to just get kind of lost in the shuffle. And that's a real missed opportunity, I think. So you have to identify them first. The second one being sharing collections, what we call collections, wish lists, all the same thing. But for your top buyers, and this is manual, and that's okay. But we want to create collections like custom shopping wish lists for your clients. And this is prior to them coming in the store. This is based on what you know about them, their previous purchases, your ability to take maybe something that they've mentioned in the store, collect put together a personalized collection and send it to them. And with the invitation of, hope to see you this holiday. I put together some ideas. If you're thinking jewelry this year, tell me what you think. If you put the time and attention doing that to your VIPs, I mean, that's an amazing level of service that you would provide for them. You just need to be able to do it in a way that scales, right? It's very hard to do that without some sort of software solution. And we recommend targeting your VIPs with it. And it's okay that it's manual in this aspect of it because these guys are the big spenders. So you want to take some time and put your thoughts together there. And the more you send out, the more sales will come. Number 3 is holiday events. This is a great way to boost traffic and engagement. If you don't have large events at the store, it's really a great way to drive some traffic this holiday. And when we utilize Clientbook, we do this through mass messaging, through campaigns. We take the segments that we create. So the first part of this, and then you could develop kind of personalized outreach that feel one-on-one, but you're really targeting a large portion. So those steady eddies, you could really make them feel like this is a one-on-one relationship, a one-on-one personalized invitation to this event that we're having, yet you're doing it in a matter of minutes, as opposed to what you're going to do with your VIPs, which is a little bit more targeted, a little bit more manual. And this, again, and first-time customers as well, this, again, allows you not to ignore those parts of your customer base that you just don't have time to get to with a personalized outreach. Next one being is setting goals around the concept of clienteling. And when you do this, what I found in business is anything that you talk about, you tend to make progress on. And anything that you have a goal for, then it really gets hypercharged. So if you're in a morning huddle with your team and you're talking about how many clienteling touches we're going to get in that day, and everybody has a part to play in it, you're going to see an increase. You're going to tell them that this is important to me as a store owner. This is a part of our plan this holiday season in order for it to be effective. So, and what you'll find is once you start doing this every day and talking to them about this, about 3 months down the road, you're not going to have to talk about it as much as you did initially because you have built the culture with your team. With our last couple minutes here, I want to talk a little bit about how a CRM like Clientbook can help you through these different challenges and seize on these opportunities. And there's a lot of what Clientbook does, but I'll try to group it into probably 5 different categories. But what we find that's most important is that and before we could get to those different categories of Clientbook is we have to, as a solution, solve 4 things for a retailer in order to make this effective. And what we found is we have to, number one, put all this information in one place. So all that customer data, we've got to get it all centralized and get it out of that spread out kind of broken place that we find between point of sales and physical notebooks and third-party messaging apps. We got to put it all in one place. 2, the technology has to be easy to use. I'm sure a lot of you out there have had technologies that you bought for the store. It's difficult to get your staff to do it. It's hard to train on. We spent a lot of time at Clientbook focused on building apps that just the nature of apps are so much easier to navigate through than most of these software solutions that we use in our business world. And number 3, we have to provide a level of automation that you could scale your personalized service to a whole lot of customers. We know that your store does not service 1 customer a day, and that you probably have upwards of 20,000 customers in your database. There has to be a level of automation that helps you stay connected with all of them. And then lastly, the reports are so essential in just telling you how you did and kind of shedding the light on clienteling in general. The way we accomplish that is through these different kind of buckets of features that I'll highlight, and won't go into every nook and cranny here. But essentially, client management, what that means to us is that we're going to be able to have unique client profiles that are either uploaded in Clientbook or connected through your point of sale, and puts all that information in one place. We're going to have that transaction history. We're going to know the wish list. We're going to segment them with those tags that I mentioned earlier, and you're going to be able to manage that in one kind of sweeping motion through Clientbook without it being so time consuming and difficult. Next one being messaging is really, our customers, how do they want to be interacted with? Well, messaging is a huge part of this. SMS primarily, obviously email is a component, and listen, phone calls still play a role in how we reach out to our customers, but 70, I would say probably upwards of 80% prefer texting at this point. And you want to provide a way for them to do that right in their client record so that you could have a history of everything. And we do that through the ability to do personalization through those campaigns that we mentioned. We can provide templates that help the staff kind of learn the right things to say. Mass messaging is a great way to promote your upcoming holiday events. And a web chat is where we start with the customer, which is probably on your website, and they might ask you a question. Well, all of that can now be captured underneath their client profile. Automation is another thing where we kind of set this aside of what this means in Clientbook, because automation, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to reach out to the right person at the right time with the right message to kind of either solidify a high level of service with that client or to promote, drive a sale for the business. And reminders are a great way to do that because that's kind of the essence of it. But we ultimately will start reading databases and populating the right reminders with that customers to keep that connection. And there's different levels of automation that can be accompanied with that, where it could be just a reminder to a sales associate, or do we really take an action on the sales associate's behalf? And this technology is just moving so fast, and it's just going to be able to help us so much now and in the years to come. So we do that around life events, but you can really do it around anything. And you could target relationship based, so you're reaching out to their wife instead of them. And obviously reviews continue to be something so important for us to have those automations around and just continually every day get more and more Google reviews. Teams is something we talk about in the concept of building that culture of clienteling, that accountability around clienteling. So we even gamified a little bit, and we have something called Leaderboard that really shows you your top client engagement score that day, that week, that month. It really gets the staff just kind of centered around that this is something important to this company and we want to highlight it. Also gives you the concept of pipelines, which is us tracking sales opportunities. If somebody came into the store and they were looking for an engagement ring and they didn't buy that day, well, where does it go in your current process? In Clientbook, we're going to create a whole list of those people that we can have reach out. How do we get them back into the store and set goals around this? Analytics is essentially our reporting engines that we use to take this data and lift the veil on the accountability in stores. Who's doing what did that look, what did the interaction look like? Are we happy with it, with that sales associate, with that store? What's their volume of reach out? How do we go to enhance it? And like the old saying goes, you can't manage something if you can't measure it. So this is our measurement component of Clientbook, that your management team, store owners, they'll spend more time here than your sales associates because they want to understand really the health of the business. And that's what it really takes, is those kind of different buckets of technologies that are available to you today in order to create that lasting clienteling culture. And it's no better time to start. If you're with Clientbook right now and you need some more motivation to use these different features, I hope this was helpful. And if you're somebody who hasn't used Clientbook yet, we'd love to show you a personalized demonstration of Clientbook. You just simply go to clientbook.com and book demo, and you could schedule right there. And typically, demo will last about 30 minutes, but we personalize it to your store. And with that, I'd like to invite Carly to come back on and see if we can answer some questions for you guys around Clientbook, or overall just clienteling in general. Even if it has nothing to do with Clientbook, please fill out the questionnaire that we have in the bottom of the Zoom, and we could get started.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate that. Just to our attendees, if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A forum. And then in the meantime, we do have some that have already been submitted. So we'll start with our first one here. I know that it is easier to retain clients than to get them. What is your favorite way to get clients?
So new customer acquisition? I think that's the question. I've tried just about everything marketing wise over the years, and I really believe that every market's different. So what has worked in mine might not translate to your stores, but for me, it's been reviews and radio. And I had a marketing mentor once tell me, it's kind of a fallacy for you to think that you could be good at a lot of different things in marketing. You really need to choose one or two things that you want to own and be great at. And so at Corinne Jewelers, we own the radio in our local market, and we have upwards of 1,000 reviews that we've gotten through Clientbook that somebody could go on. And we just hear this every day at the store. They'll come in, they'll say, "Oh, I heard you on the radio," or they'll say, "I read all your reviews. It's fantastic. You guys obviously know what you're doing." And those two things help solidify us as one of the places to go to if you're thinking jewelry.
Awesome. Okay, so our next question that we have here is, how quickly can a CRM like Clientbook be implemented and yield visible results during a high traffic period like the holiday season?
Great question. So I'll speak to our implementation a little bit, what our process is. And then I'll speak to how can you just kind of start getting wins through the holiday. So implementation tends to take around 2 weeks. And in that 2-week period, if we have a point of sale connection, we integrate with there, we take over all your information. If there's no point of sale integration, we're going to ask you for some CSV files that you can that will help, and we'll do this for you, populate into Clientbook, really get that customer profiles all set up for us to get wins. And in order to be effective for the holidays, I think you need to, because Clientbook does a lot of different things. So I would say you really want to lean into the handful of things that we went into today of what are my customers that I want to make sure I reached out to? What does the messaging look like? What am I going to send my VIPs? What am I going to send my kind of steady customers? Is there a message or outreach to my new customers that I attained this year for our holidays? And you want to see what that is. Then you want to take that and spread out the responsibility amongst your team. What is their role to play in it? And what is your role as the business owner for them? And then you want to celebrate the wins every morning. So you want to just do that huddle of, okay, Carly reached out to Mr. Jones last night. He responded. He's going to be in here Thursday. Guys, this really works. Go ahead and your top customers, go ahead and create that collection for them. If you do that every day leading into the holiday, you are guaranteed to make more sales and drive more business than you would if you didn't have that in your store previously.
Wonderful. Okay, our next question here. I'm currently using my point of sale system to store all my client data. Does Clientbook integrate with the Edge POS system, or will I have to transfer my data?
Great question. Yes, we integrate with Edge. We currently have about 700 Edge retailers on the Clientbook integration. And so, no, it will not be something that you need to do. In fact, our Edge integration tends to be done within 12 hours. So very impressive. The work on both teams there between the Edge and Clientbook's team, they facilitated a great sync between each other.
Perfect. And our next question here. You had said something about a first timer coming into the store, looking at engagement rings and then leaving. How would you add them to Clientbook to follow up if they are a first time client?
Great question, because and we get this one often because they're not in the database. So how do we get their information without seeming coming off like, I don't know, pushy or they leave, we don't know how to follow up with them. What I've always done in my stores, and I've had other people teach me this from their experiences, in order to get their information, you want to give them something. And so that you have this kind of back and forth with a customer. And the way that we do that is by simply saying, I'd love to share with you today everything that you saw. I'm going to send you a collection with all the rings that you saw here today, any notes that you'd like me to share with you. And what's the best way to do that with your cell phone? I'll share it with you right now. And this does a couple things. One, it's very impressive because most stores don't offer that type of high level of technology and service, that they get this customized link that has everything that they saw today. Two, you get their information, and when you press the button properly in Clientbook, it's now going to track that sales opportunity for you. So they're going to leave the store and then you're going to have to wait on the next customer, right? But what Clientbook will do is say, don't forget about Ryan. What are you doing to get Ryan back into the store? Have you talked to Ryan recently? It won't let you forget that you have a sales opportunity there.
Our next question is, what's the learning curve like for teams unfamiliar with CRM tools, and how can we expedite proficiency before the holiday rush?
Great question. I think what you'll find in a product like Clientbook is a different kind of experience than you've either experienced with other CRMs or other point of sale systems, because they're really built to do so much. Where Clientbook, we almost have to govern ourselves a bit more to not do a whole bunch of things. We want to focus very narrowly on what technology is used to interact with customers and what do we need to do that. And for us, we do it through an app. Even though we have a web-based version, I would tell you that utilizing an app makes things so much easier for sales associates, and it's really built almost like a consumer app that from the moment you download it, there's really only just a handful of places to poke around the bottom and kind of walks you through how to use it. So I would say that it's going to be a different kind of learning curve that you've experienced with other technologies in a good way.
Okay. I love the idea of Clientbook, but I don't know if my 6-year-old father will be interested in adopting new tech at our store. Any tips for how I can win him over?
Yes. So I'll use one of my, again, from my store, has really strong sales associates, strong personalities, one of which has been with me for a long time and been in the industry for 30 years. I don't think she would mind me sharing her age, but upwards of 70. And she does over $1 million consistently every year, million three. And she was the type of person that just said, I got it all up here, or I got it in my notebook and I got it. And she was really good, doing it manually. But what I would do with her is to say, I want you to show me how you're going to remember, and I'm going to show you in Clientbook how this would be your assistant. And I really positioned it as an assistant to her, that this isn't to disrupt you, but rather to be your easy technology that helps you in your life, that you don't need to be stressed out you're going to forget one of your best customers' anniversaries. You don't need to be stressed out that you forgot what they did for a living or what their daughter's name was or anything else you wanted to keep. It's going to be right there for you. And when I show it to you, I want you to just give me a real honest answer on if you would be able to do it with your own recall or your current processes the way that this will do it. And if you give me an honest answer, I won't make you do it. And sure enough, when you show people, they're going to say this is better. And then when you say, well, isn't it worth then for us to experiment and try something a little bit different? I think most people would agree. Most reasonable people would agree with that. And I can tell you from the age thing, because Clientbook is built with an app. So some of the other popular apps out there, right? Facebook, Instagram, the most popular age range of Facebook is 60-year-olds. So if they could use Facebook, trust me, they could use this. So it's just a motivation thing that you need to solve there.
Wonderful. Okay, I have a follow-up question here. So it says, thank you for answering my question. With getting their information to follow up about the ring, how does that interplay with tightening privacy laws?
That's a really good question. And privacy laws are rapidly changing, and can be different from state to state in the US, and I'm sure similarly in Canada. We require um, Clientbook enables you to have an opt-in strategy before you're ever able to even communicate with your clients. And you can do this for as you enter them into the system, or you could do that for customers that are already in the system. You can get them opted in. And what that does is it covers you from that SMS legislation that, all of us are still trying to learn, and interpret how to utilize this. And we've even gone to the fact of we've built even a double opt-in, because states like California in the United States has even a stricter standard than just a single opt-in. So there's a lot of different ways. And if you're a current customer or thinking about joining us, we'll just teach you how you could do that in Clientbook.
Great. Another question here. How much does it cost for one location?
Great question. Clientbook starts at annual agreements and of in around $395 a month, and there is, whether you have an integration or if you're not integrated, there's an additional $50 fee for that. There's a few different packages that you could choose from, so that's our most common package. But when you have a demo of Clientbook, they'll ask you, out of all these features, do you love this one? What's the most important thing for you right now? How many users do you have in the store right now? And that'll lead to your pricing for what you pay for Clientbook.
Okay. What are some jewelry trends you are seeing this year? Are you pushing the trends or sticking with your staples?
Oh, geez. There's I'm sure there's definitely much better people than me to talk about styling trends, because I a lot of my buying, I do a lot of budgeting for the buying at my store. I don't do a lot of the picking. So I can tell you from a numbers perspective what I see in the data of selling. And for me, it is a lot of the classics, a lot of the line bracelets, the bangles, the diamond pendants. A lot of those I am making sure that that there's no way that we're going to run into a selection problem when it comes to those that last 10 days before the holidays. So we sit down, my inventory team at the store, and we analyze kind of SKU styles over the next couple of weeks of what we feel we're going to need to be ready for. And that's what keeps popping up, blaring that, we can't just have 1 2-carat line bracelet. We need to be able to have 5 of those ready to go that last couple days. And how do we make sure that we're doing that?
Wonderful. So Ryan, is there anything else that you would like to add about the capabilities of Clientbook and how it can help retailers navigate the upcoming holiday season, or expand upon anything else that we have discussed this afternoon?
Yeah, I guess I would end by saying one of the reasons I got involved or was looking for something like this myself is one of the most frustrating things I would always do, or if on a peer group, they would say, well, what's your unique selling position at your store? And what you're trying to do is, what do you do that nobody else has? And the reality is, we're not Apple. We don't have something that we sell that really nobody else sells. And maybe we're trying to do that with some brands, but we know what happens there. They either sell online eventually, or they open up somewhere near where your store is. It's very hard to find that unique selling proposition for your stores. So what I found was the level of personalized shopping experience that you'll have at my store versus others. And I just felt that was the biggest impact to the growth of my business. The moment I started focusing there and leaving my focus on that, I doubled my business from, over a certain period of time. And so to this day, I'm just always asking myself, how do we do that part of the business better? How can we enhance that business? I know they could get a 2-carat bracelet for less money down the street or online. They're coming to us because of the experience and the trust and relationship. And that's where I want to spend my focus.
Okay, awesome. We'll give a couple. Oh, here we go. Perfect. How do you showcase the personal shopping experience through your marketing?
Yeah, I would let your reviews, if you're not capturing reviews of people sharing that about your store, I think that's something that you should make mandatory, that you want to utilize a product like Clientbook, and one of those first automations, you're going to make sure that everybody receives that review to get that 5 stars and for them to share their experience. Because what I think, advertising that you have great service, you just sound like somebody talking about yourself. And I had somebody teach me that once, that, they played me a bunch of ads of jewelers, and everybody talking about the service that you have. And the way they described it is, you're kind of that weird person on the date that just talks about themselves the whole time. And you shouldn't do that. You're there for them. And what we found was that our customers will do the talking for them. And it was similar to a Nordstrom's approach, where Nordstrom's, at least back in the day, they're just known for their service, right? Everybody had that association with Nordstrom's. And if you read their book, The Nordstrom Way, it will point out that they have never once in any advertising claimed that they had great service. Never. They've only done it through their customers. It went every day through the actions that they took to make sure that was their reputation. So that's how I think about, talking about it, and I would talk about it through your customers.
So, are you selecting who to send requests for reviews to, or do the requests go to everyone through your automations?
Personally, I don't. I send it to absolutely everyone. And I sometimes hear from retailers who are like, well, we just want to choose the ones we know we're going to get a 5-star. And like, well, one, everybody should be a 5-star. That should be the standard in your store. That's the standard in mine. I know that that's an impossible task as a retailer, but I want to know if they didn't have a great experience. And what happens here is I create that culture in my store that every single person is going to be getting a review. And if you ask my staff if there's one thing will Ryan be disappointed in, it won't necessarily be we missed the sale, because it happens. We'll train on it. But if we give a bad experience to somebody, I just find that to be unacceptable. And we're going to use it as a lesson, and we'll move on from there. And you know what? It's okay if in the smattering of all those 5 stars, every once in a while they see that 1 or that 2. It just validates that, 1, that person's probably a little off, and then 2, that the other ones are real. You didn't buy those ones because you're allowing good and bad information out there.
So, okay, we have a couple more minutes. So if anyone has any questions that they have for Ryan, please feel free, either in the chat or the Q&A. While they're thinking about that, Ryan, do you have contact information that you can share with us, either just so that they can get in contact with you to answer any questions or set up a demo or anything like that?
Absolutely. So my personal contact information is just ryanb@clientbook.com. So you're more than welcome to reach out to me personally there. If you'd like to see a demo of Clientbook, if you just go on our website, clientbook.com, and there'll be a little button that says demonstration. Or if you want to get there immediately, it's just clientbook.com and then /demo. It'll ask you to fill out your name, number, best way to get a hold of you. And you'll even be able to select a time that works for you on your schedule to participate in that demonstration.
Wonderful. Okay, so that appears to be all the questions that we have this afternoon. So Ryan, I just want to thank you for taking the time to give us your informative presentation today. And I also want to thank our attendees for coming to our presentation. And just so everyone is aware, there will be a recording of the complete webinar available on the webinar section of jewelrybusiness.com 1 week from now. We'll also be sending a link of the recording via email to all of today's attendees. So thank you to everyone who joined us for the presentation. And before you go, please just take a few minutes to give us your feedback by completing our survey. It should appear in your browser after you close the webinar. Thanks again, and I hope you all have a great afternoon.
Thanks for your time, everyone. Have a great season.